Micheal Johnson, Superintendent of Schools, Eau Claire Area School District.
And how long have you been in this role?
A month and a half.
A month and a half.
Yes.
So you just started here in Eau Claire. We were talking a little bit, you said you'd lived in Eau Claire previously. You went to the University of Wisconsin at Eau Claire, and you're now back after about 17 years?
Yes, my wife and I and our oldest child had moved in 2003 to River Falls, Wisconsin.
So this is kind of, a welcome home for you. And, with everything going on, it's also kind of, a way to throw you into the fire, to say, right?
It is, but it's an opportunity that my family and I couldn't pass up. And what really helps is that many other superintendents and leaders and teachers, we're all going through this at the same time. And I've said this before quite often, is that it's pretty easy to lead when things are going very well, when your finances are in order as a school district and you got great things going, wonderful test scores. But when it comes down to it, you need great leadership in times of crisis and in times of difficulty, and it's a challenge. But I'm up to it, and I hope the last month and a half has been an indication of that.
So before we get into the approved plan that is in effect now, that obviously could change, as we progress into the rest of the year, into the beginning of the school year, that is. There was a task force that was created by the district specifically. Could we talk about that?
Yes, absolutely. What I had learned, and this was in my past position as an assistant superintendent over in suburban Minneapolis-St. Paul, we were working on the same types of things. And it seemed like in May of this year, as the school year was finishing up in Eau Claire, the district had started a reopening of schools task force. And at that time, there were fewer amounts of people who had joined that, but now it's up to 138 people. It's a mixture of stakeholders throughout the community, staff, administrators, parents, community members, city and county health, and even students to help us in the work that we need to do. And that had started about mid-May. And they had met weekly. In fact, today, while this is being filmed, we're going to be meeting at 10 o'clock, just as an update, but that's a weekly update. But we have probably close to 20 divisions where they have specific work that they're focusing on. And I'm really proud of that work that people have done and where people have come together to help us at this time.
So what are some of the things that, have been talked about during those sessions with the task force? What are you discussions, concerns, things like that, just so the public knows what is going on during those meetings?
In those meetings, in those smaller breakout sessions, there are people, administrators, staff members, directors who lead certain pieces of that work. For example, examining our policies, examining our finances, what types of staffing models will we need to be flexible with when we're staffing, and right now we're staffing since our model was approved in late July by the school board. Another thing would be obviously the cleaning procedures, safety and security. Those are the types of breakout groups that we have in order to plan to make sure that the school year starts as safely and as well as possible.
So when we're looking at, the end of the school year, obviously you weren't in this role just yet. You just started a month and a half ago, but they did, close the schools statewide, and there was 3 months of at-home learning in this district, and 100% virtual summer school as well. But when we're looking at the fall of 2020, there is the virtual option, but it is the model. Talk to me about, what virtual summer school was like and those 3 months of at-home learning to the most of your ability, because obviously you weren't here.
Sure. Well, first off, my children go to school in Wisconsin. They go to school in River Falls, and it was very interesting to note the similarities between Eau Claire Area School District and River Falls, but also I was working in Minnesota, and to note some slight differences between the two states in the communication and the leadership. But what I learned with the online option for our summer schools here in Eau Claire, it was obviously very different. And our administrators in charge of that had shared that as well. It certainly wasn't ideal, but we made the best of it with those students. And the unfortunate thing is those students really need that time. They need that time with caring adults, and it's really different when it's virtual. So we're really concerned about the opportunity gap, the achievement gap. However, I think it's really important that we did the best we could with our ability, with the technology and the curriculum and our staff who are helping our students.
So the 100% virtual summer school, we're getting ready for the new school year, and there has been an approved plan, and the school board did meet, and that was a 5 hour about long meeting. They didn't vote until midnight. There was lots of discussion from parents, from staff, from board members themselves. Could you just give me a little breakdown of the plan itself? What is that going to look like for you guys this year?
No, that's great. What we had done was we had really surveyed our parents and our parents, families, staff late in June, early in July, and we were able to mold that plan for approval on the 20th. This isn't something that takes a day or two. This had been taking quite a bit of time since May to plan for that. We were ready to present on the 20th to the school board, and obviously it was a 5 hour meeting, but it's necessary. We could have gone for another 5 hours actually, because there were some great questions. There were 13 questions and 13 pieces of public comment that I think were very important for all of us to hear on differing sides of this situation. As we learn more about the virus and how it impacts our students, our families, we really got quite a bit of information from City County Health to be able to separate our rooms based on square footage and our capacity. But like I said, we could have spent another 5 hours just on the instructional model, and they were excellent questions. It really, even though I was here for 5 hours and I tripped an alarm because I'm not supposed to be here past 11 o'clock at night in my office, it was really interesting. And we had taken those themes, the questions that we'd gotten from the school board, as well as from families and community members, and we're taking those themes, so every school board meeting we have from now on, we are updating the public and our board and our staff and our families on those themes. For example, cleaning procedures, safety, equity, the instructional model. Those are just some items that we will continue to apprise the board and the community about in every school board meeting we have.
So looking specifically at the instructional model, it's different per age grade level, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about
yes,
that.
it is, from pre-K all the way up to grade 12. And in kindergarten and grades 3 through 12, it's a hybrid model. Now, students and families do have a choice if they would like to go 100% virtual, and we respect and honor that because they may have a situation in their family where someone is medically compromised and they're just not able to, and that's okay. But that's with our content from the Eau Claire Area School District curriculum as well as our teachers. On the flip side, the hybrid model would be students are in school 2 days a week in cohorts and then 3 days of virtual schooling. In first and second grade, it's a little bit different because no one will be going to school more than 4 days a week in person, because on Wednesday we're doing a deeper cleaning of our facilities with electrostatic sprayers. So in first and second grade, we had felt, the district had felt, that that's such a critical time for early foundational learning, the ability for early literacy to take place. We really want to make sure that kids are learning to read by third grade, and that's why that was so critical. So those students will be going in smaller cohorts, obviously, anywhere from maybe 10 to 12, maybe 13 students at a time, 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday for those grades. Everyone else will be going 2 days a week with 3 days of virtual.
And that plays into what you were talking about earlier with the achievement gap, correct? Trying to close that and keep that.
Exactly. And we talk a lot about, when we hear from our staff, we're learning about the ability to deliver what they can in students learning online. And we're very concerned about our students, but our students learning, but obviously our teachers feel, it's really difficult to be our best when we're not in front of kids. And we totally understand that. So we're working with them to do the best we can. However, ultimately, when kids show up in that, the doorway and they get to meet their teacher for the first time, whether it's virtually or in person, they're maybe not as concerned about masks. They want to connect, they want to have relationships with their friends in their class, and they want to have an outstanding relationship with their teacher. And that's where the achievement gap can be off to a great start, where we can hopefully close that, because relationships matter. And if I have a great relationship with my teacher, I'm going to be inspired by him or her. And that's what we really need to focus on that first day of school, because you only get that first day of school once.
So you mentioned masks, and obviously when this plan was approved, there was not a statewide mask order in effect. and then it was put into effect by Governor Evers, and then the district had a meeting and decided to have it be required for students. Talk to me just a little bit about that.
Sure. That was something that we heard quite a bit about in early July, and we wanted to make sure that we addressed it on July 20th as part of our instructional plan and part of being safe and our communication with city and county health. We thought that was extremely critical. We had heard that from many phone calls, from emails from the public, and granted, there were strong feelings on both sides. However, we wanted to make sure our staff and students were as safe as possible. We did get out front a little bit, and we did have a meeting on August 3rd with our school board, but we had publicized that probably 2 days before the governor had announced his order. And we're proud of that because we wanted to make a statement. We thought that was very, very important for our families, for our students, and for our staff. So we're very comfortable with that, and we've gotten a lot of positive feedback on it as well. And it just seems like that's very consistent across the state now, where you're expected to wear a mask when you go in public places.
And that your guys' order is in effect until September 28th, but I know from reporting that we've done here at News 18, the plan might change. It's fluid considering, everything that's going on and how closely you guys are working with the health department.
Absolutely. We have to be, in all aspects of our instructional plan and safety plans, we have to be nimble, we have to be flexible. But we anticipate continuing with our rules and our procedures that we had shared with a resolution that the board had approved 7-0 on August 3rd, is that we will continue wearing masks, even though the governor's order had stopped on, or will stop on September 28th. We anticipate we'll continue to wear masks to make sure we ensure the safety of our staff and our students. When
it comes to masks here in school, is the district planning to provide them for students that might not have them?
Yes, we have gotten masks from the state, 2 masks per student, and we have already purchased and we have received masks for our staff as well. There are some elements to our procedure that we've been speaking as an administrative team about, as well as in consultation with our district legal counsel about what types of masks, the types of definitions and the wording to make sure that the masks are safe in terms of a mask versus a face covering. But those are details that we'll iron out, that we'll continue to address when to use them, when a staff member could possibly take them off when he or she is presenting, and when students could too. When they're more than 6 feet away and they're having a presentation in class, it's sometimes difficult to wear that mask. But if it's just back and forth with some discussion in class where it's not as pronounced, it's not as long, that's okay, that we'll keep that mask on.
Has the district also received thermometers from the state?
I do believe so. Most things that we were required from the state, I do think we have gotten thermometers in talking with our business office, our finance office. It's just a matter of sorting those out and getting those into the schools across the district. But for right now, on this date right now, I think we're pretty pleased with all the PPE that we do have. And obviously we have to continue to organize that and make sure that that families and students feel safe, as well as our staff.
When it comes to the social distancing aspect, I know at the high school passing periods, what is that looking like?
In talking with the high school in altering our schedule a bit, making the periods a little bit longer, as we explained in our August 3rd board meeting, and the same thing at the middle school, to make the periods a little bit longer, to tighten up the cohorts so there is not as much passing time. One thing we've explored, and one thing as we're filming today, principals are still meeting about logistics, to possibly stagger some of the traveling times, whether the students stay in the same class and the teachers travel to them. Those are all things I think we can mitigate that risk, where we're not having, at Memorial or North, we've got 1,700 students walking the halls at one time like you would see in some pictures of schools who have started already. We want to make sure that it's orderly, we're maintaining that social distance, and the kids are safe.
And you mentioned that on Wednesdays there's going to be a deep cleaning. Can you talk to me about that?
Yes, there would be regular cleaning that would take place throughout the day. For example, we would take our custodial staff, and generally they would be working that second shift in schools, but maybe shifting some of that where we would be doing more spot cleaning on high traffic areas. Doorknobs, areas in certain hallways that are high touch areas. The metal plates on bathrooms, for example, the push plates, where those have been identified already, and those would be spot cleaned far more often during the school day than regular. But on Wednesday, we have invested in far more electrostatic sprayers. What I learned in the district is there used to be 2 electrostatic sprayers with a certain chemical, that there were 2 across the entire district. Now we have 2 per secondary school in our larger schools, and each elementary has 1. And these are able to be utilized, it takes about 10 minutes per classroom from what I've understood in talking to our buildings and grounds director, and it will take at our secondary schools approximately 1 day to have 2 custodians utilize those to make sure that there is a deep clean with those electrostatic sprayers. They will be used during the school day, after the school day is done, in some high traffic areas as well, but to get the entire school done at our secondary schools takes 2 custodians for a full shift.
So there will be sanitation every single day that students are actually in the buildings here.
That is correct.
Could you talk to me a little bit about, when it comes to transportation? Obviously, a lot of kids rely on school buses to get to school, and, they have to wear the masks on there, correct, as well. What is that looking like when it comes to social distancing for these kids?
I think our relationship with City County Health Department has been fantastic. It's been something we've enjoyed over the years. I've heard it from a variety of people. The other thing I've heard from a variety of people for years is how fantastic our student transit is, led by Jim Fye. Jim's our transportation director, and they've been in business in the community since 1939. And they are a very trusted family as well as a trusted business, and we feel they're part of the school district. They're part of family. And we've been really happy with the relationship we've had with them for years. I've been able to speak with Jim, looking forward to meeting his staff, but they have spoken, because there are other communities that use student transit as well and other school districts. We're very happy with the relationship that we've had with student transit and the city and county health to make sure that, yep, masks are going to be worn, we're going to have social distancing, but we're also going to serve as many kids as possible. So it seems like every week we're updated from city county health or from our transportation department to say, yes, we're able to take on X amount of students, and we're able to do that safely and securely, and so that kids can get to school.
Another aspect of the school day that a lot of students rely on, depending on family dynamics, because, it's different for each family, is, lunch, getting lunch and breakfast, getting that meal at school. What is that looking like for these kids that do rely on having a meal when they go to school? If they're at home, what does that look like for them?
Absolutely. That's another one of the logistics that's a major component for us and our Director of Nutrition Services. He was here at 6:15 this morning getting things ready for the meetings that we were going to have. He meets with our principals and he gets input from them about, number one, getting kids the lunch they need and getting that safely, and making sure we have the social distancing when we go pick up. And then maybe we bring it back to a classroom or we bring it back to an open area. But he has to work very closely with our principals in terms of logistics at each one of our schools to make sure that kids are able to eat, they're getting a nutritious meal, and they're doing so safely.
And students will be eating lunch in their classrooms?
That remains to be seen in some areas. Yes, classrooms, there may be some, and you could see it around some of our secondary schools too. Some kids just like to eat on the floor. They'll take a hallway or part of a gym, and they just like to kind of spread out, and that's where they like to eat, or that's where they like to have a snack. So once again, with our principals meetings that we've had this week, we're planning on Monday through Wednesday, we're clearing the decks for principals so they can really get to that deep planning for things just like you would think, just as simple as lunch, but really there's a lot that goes into that.
One thing that is, children really look forward to, especially younger children, is recess. Mm-hmm. And, for older students, middle school, high school, they have that gym class that they go to. Mm-hmm. What's different this year now with locker rooms or, playground equipment, things like that? Sure.
We have to be wary of the high-touch areas, and we had talked about masks a little bit before. When do students get to go out for recess? Is it an entire grade that gets to go out for recess? Well, when you've got anywhere from 25 to 125 students that go out at one time, we really need to be careful about that. So we're taking our cue from city and county health. Do we have the students keep the masks on? Are they able to take the masks off? Once again, those are the types of things that this week for us and probably next week is very critical.
When we're talking about, when students wear masks and when they don't, is there a discipline aspect coming from the schools when it comes to, if a student isn't wearing a mask in a certain part where they're required to?
Certainly they would, but we're basing that on the developmental level of the student and the age. High school students like my own children, I think, they definitely know better. And we're really not looking to discipline students first. We want to educate, and we've got some public service announcements, some of them kind of fun with one of our principals, where we're starting to get the word out, especially for our younger students, about wearing a mask, how to properly wear a mask. There were things I didn't even know. When I would wear a mask, I'd be touching my face a little bit and not using the loop. But I think they're educational, they're kind of fun, and it's getting kids to learn about that so that it's not that big of a shock when they come to school and they know. But we're really choosing to focus on the education part and why it's so important. We want to keep our classmates safe, and we want to keep our staff safe as well. So that's what we're looking for in terms of sharing that knowledge with the kids and to be able to teach. But yes, if students are going to be defiant and not do that, there have got to be some consequences.
When it comes to, calling in sick students or seeing the nurse, what does that look like this year? Because on any other, regular school year, it might just be, oh, he's not feeling too well today, he's not going to make it in, he's just going to stay home. But what does it look like if a student wants to call in on a day they're supposed to be here in person?
Yes, and we're continuing to work with that with our city county health. We have weekly meetings with them, the area superintendents. Then I share that information with our administrative team, and then we get to those, as I had mentioned before, those groups of people that are, the logistics component. It looks a bit different where we would have, for example, isolation rooms when students do have maybe, they do complain about maybe having a fever or sore throat, cough, those types of symptoms that are consistent with COVID, especially multiple systems, to then call them down to the office. School nurse or health professional would be able to check them out, and we'd place them in a room that is really dedicated just for that spot. And then we would obviously contact parents to be able to pick up, but it is a far different protocol than we've had before. So we really need to ensure the student safety as well as our staff's safety as well.
When something like that happens, would you encourage maybe a parent going to a 100% virtual option when it comes to something like that?
We don't want to, I don't think we would really want to, we would want to inform parents so that they could make the best decisions for their students. We would not really want to force people to do so. And then again, if the student had gotten tested and those symptoms subsided and they did not have COVID, definitely welcome them back, because that happens quite a bit even in our administrative building at 500 Main. People have a symptom, then they're able to go home, and then we check on them, make sure that 24 hours they're symptom free, and then able to come back to work. So we have to, like I said before, in all of these we have to be flexible, but we also have to follow certain protocols that city and county health have helped us with.
While we're on the topic of this, yesterday you had released, just an informational kind of a statement regarding what the protocol is if someone does test positive for COVID. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. Because of our relationship with City County Health, there are some things, and we wanted to make sure we got that out within 3 to 4 weeks of when school had started, but we really want to inform our parents and as well as our staff that we do have a plan. But there are some things where sometimes parents and even staff a little bit are confused, where we're not able to share as much information and to be able to make those phone calls ourselves. If a student has symptoms or if somebody does get COVID in a classroom, we're informed by City County Health if someone does have that. And what we help with is when we are informed, we would be able to, in order to understand who was around that student or who was around that staff member. Now, secondly, they need to be, they do have privacy rights. We can't just say, well, teacher A has COVID right now. That's something we cannot do. But what we do and work very closely with city county health on is, okay, which periods was that teacher working? Which classrooms were they in? Did they have close contact? And those are the types of things that we cannot do as an educational system. We don't have the knowledge to do that because we have learned that it's not a school nurse asking a few questions. This is the city county health professionals asking in an interview format 20 minutes to an hour of contact tracing to be able to determine where the student or the staff member who was infected was, who was around them, and for how long, and were they wearing their masks. So it's really quite involved, and we need to follow that to maintain that safe atmosphere.
So when it comes to students' mental health during this trying time, is the district planning to offer any specialized counseling to help students, kind of cope, and like you said, the educational aspect to understand what's going on?
Absolutely. Those are going to be things that we've got to work with our teachers, but most notably our counselors, psychologists, our administrators, to make sure it's a different type of trauma. And we know that over this past spring, students had the same or different types of trauma as well. So it somewhat multiplies exponentially, and we really have to be aware, and we have to focus on those relationships first to get to know our students instead of, okay, day one we're going to get into this type of content area. We really need to learn about our students and focus on relationships first because they matter.
So it's kind of an individualized process when it comes to that.
Absolutely.
Talk to me a little bit about your staff, teachers, people here in the office. What are they feeling like during this time? I know we're getting closer to the start of school, and of course I'm sure they're anxious to be back into the the new normal, I guess. But what are they letting you know? How do they feel?
Well, I hope they feel that they can share their concerns. I've heard from many teachers and try to get back to as many of them as possible. We have a frequently asked questions site where we have our staff concerns as well as our family concerns because they're very different. Love hearing from staff about this, and we want to give them as much information as possible. And to be honest, it's really good to be able to tell them we don't know at this time, and that's okay. But we will ask those questions of City County Health. And there are a couple instances where City County Health is not aware either, and they're working on that as well. But it's great to hear from our teachers. For example, 2 days from when this is being filmed, we're having, I believe there's a Zoom meeting with all the county schools staff who are available, are able to submit questions. We had sent that out to our staff. I think we're sending that out either yesterday or today, where from 10 to 11 a.m. they're able to share questions and listen to City County Health answers on those types of things. So hopefully that makes them feel better, because ultimately we could provide those answers, but I don't think it's I think it's far more unsettling to have a superintendent who's not in the medical field to be able to answer those questions. So we go right to the experts, and we hope that staff will appreciate that, and maybe we will be able to do that even closer to the beginning of school year and maybe into the school year too.
So when it comes to the 100% virtual option, why was it important for the district to offer that for families here in Eau Claire?
It's because our families wanted it, and they wanted it. We wanted to make sure that we had honored their wishes, because we know that there are X amount of percent of students who do have a pre-existing condition that COVID could seriously impact, or there's a family member who has that as well. So last year, in using our learning management system, Canvas, there were some teachers and students who found some success with that. And they like that type of mode of education. Many students we found through our surveys, they definitely would love to be at school for the social aspects, and that's how they learn best. But there are some, because of their learning style, or because they have a medical condition, or someone in their family does, who'd be compromised if they had that virus, where they're choosing to stay home, and that's okay. So we're proud about offering our curriculum with our teachers to be able to do that.
So for families that are choosing that, is the district offering any help when it comes to internet or smart devices or anything like that?
That's obviously, that was part of, on July 6th, we had made a lease purchase for technology. We also need to determine how many hotspots are needed for people without internet access. And we were very fortunate this past spring to get some help from our Eau Claire Schools Public Foundation, where they were able to help with some of that, and I know they've reached out as well. And we just need to determine how many we need for the start of school. But in surveying people and phone calls and such, I think we're able to get a pretty good number on that. But once again, these next 3 to 4 weeks are very critical for us.
When it comes to special needs students, what is their education looking like? Because sometimes it can be, it's necessary to be kind of hands-on with a student that requires special needs.
Yep. In talking with in learning, in discussing with our principals as well as our director of special education, the close contact that they've had with their case managers, the teachers that the students have, following their IEPs, their individualized plans, as closely as possible, and sometimes altering those plans, but connecting with families before the school year just to ensure, okay, what is our plan right now? Are you 100% virtual, or will you be able to come in? And altering that plan just to be able to deliver the best education possible, because those kids deserve it.
And those are already small classrooms, correct?
That's correct, and they're outfitted obviously differently, the square footage, the equipment in some of those rooms as well, and those are dedicated spaces for those students because they need it.
You mentioned earlier isolation rooms. Could you talk a little bit more in detail about what that would look like if, you said if someone was experiencing symptoms, is it just one student per isolation room, or would it be a few, if they're all different age groups? How does the learning work if they're in one of those rooms?
No, that's a great question. In that type of an isolation room, it's really until a parent can pick them up. We would not have more than one student in that room at one time. As soon as we were able to check some of those vital statistics and those, I guess, health situations and symptoms, contacting the parent right away to be able to pick that child up. Now, if we have more students than we have room, there are protocols for that as well. But to start with, we're just going to see how that goes. But we've definitely worked with our administrators and some of our support staff to, we need to have these 2 spaces, or we need to have this space dedicated. So we're altering where people are working, but maintaining their socially distant area as well. That's 6 feet where, if I need to move out of this room, we can work in this manner where we're more than 6 feet apart and we're masked up and we have our shields.
Okay. When it comes to, after school programs, obviously, it's all across the country. We've been seeing cancellations and things like that. Do you guys offer any, after school care, child care, anything like that would be different this year?
It will be different. We have to, based on the numbers of students that we will have, we work with other agencies like the YMCA, for example, and I've communicated with them, and we've had some of our liaisons communicate with them as well. We need to find out how much square footage we have, how many students will be on campus at our elementary schools, for example, that we may be able to serve them in programming after schools. But at this point, we're really not sure until we get that firm. We're still going over the data from our survey from last Thursday. And then connecting with those groups to make sure that we have that space to be able to deliver what we had delivered in the past. Yes, it will look different because of the social distancing component and everything that goes with that.
Will there be any like chess club, Spanish club, things like that for older students to be participating in, or?
That's just like with our sports and activities. We really have to be careful of the cohorts that we have. If you're an AA student and you're going to school on Monday, Tuesday, we can't mix those up. We're having to be very creative with our clubs to be able to do certain things on, whether it's Microsoft Groups or Zoom or other modes where students can meet, whether it's student council. It's so important to kids. Sometimes for them, that's the reason why they come to school, would be the clubs and the activities. So we're doing the best we can to make sure that we can deliver that. But in terms of sports, that could be something different, and we're working through our state agency. They have a very big meeting 3 days from now where we will get more information for them. But our coaches, our activities directors, our administrators, and our advisors, they're all preparing to see what they can do to deliver those types of things and activities for students, because they know how important they are.
We talked a little bit off camera about, helping students cope and things like that. We've seen a lot of social justice movements going on throughout the country at the same time that we've seen the pandemic rolling through. What are some of the steps the district is going to take, or you guys are planning to do, to make sure that students know that their voices are heard no matter what, topic they want to discuss?
Sure. I think it's very critical to talk, to have professional development with all of our teachers. And I think the first thing that comes to mind, it doesn't matter what district you're in, is student voice. Students need to have a voice, they need to be heard, and I think because relationships matter, and I've said that a few times already today, when students feel comfortable and they have that relationship with that caring adult, whether it's a teacher or a support staff member, and they can share their voice and what they're experiencing, whether it's certain things at home that are occurring, or whether it's social justice situations that have occurred this past summer and spring, I think then we're able to deal with those and to help students through those. So first would be student voice. The second thing would be that we have systems in place, and I've heard from a variety of folks around the district. I knew that was very, very important in my interview, that equity was really important in the interview in March, in my first round of interviews, as well as April. Those questions were very targeted, and I can tell. And I'm proud of that with this district, that we're moving in that way. And then unfortunately in May, with the George Floyd tragedy, it sparked that movement, and all across the country. I was right in the middle of it in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the officer involved in the killing of George Floyd was from our high school that I was working at, Park High School in Cottage Grove. He was an alumnus. So in talking with students, I'd actually reached out to students and staff when we had learned that news, and people were hurting. And so it was very fresh back in May. The conversations that I've had with those staff and students, I'll never forget those. But it also impacts Eau Claire, just 75 miles away too. Kids are hurting. They've got relatives who live over in St. Paul, Minneapolis. So I think, at the school level, it's really important to have, I had a staff member tell me, it's great to have grassroots, but it's efforts at each of our schools, but it's also nice to have some support from the top as well. And I think that's the best way to describe it. People are aching for some assistance for their kids, and they just want some help. So my district was a little bit different, where we had 33% students of color. In Eau Claire, it's not to that level. However, it doesn't matter the percentages, it matters the professional development you've had and the willingness to, where are you on your equity journey and how are you going to be able to help kids. So I do have a meeting, and I've met with this group called the Equity Advocacy Team, EAT. And they're just people that want to make a difference, and they want to help because they understand they either have children of color themselves or they have them in their classes, and they have noticed, boy, these kids really need some help from us as a staff based on what they're going through from students or out in the community. And it's really nice to get those resources together and to learn what staff want to do collectively, but yet individually at a different school, because every school is a little bit different. But in caring for these students and making sure that they have student voice and acknowledging that is really key for us.
So when we're looking back onto the instructional model, obviously you've been saying that you guys are going to be fluid, you have to be flexible. What is your message to families about, they aren't set in stone, the plans, things could change. What do you say to them about, the steps forward that you guys are taking and what the rest of the year might look like?
I think the key is that in order for our district to trust us, we have to be transparent in our communication. It's okay to say, and we've heard that from a variety of people, it's okay to say, at this point we are not sure, we don't know. But if X occurs, then we will be doing Y, and we will be implementing that. Because of our relationship with city and county health, we feel that they would give us advance notice where we could plan. And I think to get the school year started and to have a successful rollout to the school year, to get relationships for our students established, as well as the technology component and the Canvas venue to have a great start, where if we do have to make a change or we have to pivot a little bit differently to totally virtual, 100% for everybody, we can do that. We realize that we cannot do the same things that we had done in the spring, and we learned that from families. They said that's just not acceptable in many cases. But some teachers and some students had really flourished. They really liked that. But that's what we need to do, is to build upon that and to share with our staff when we have our professional development days. Focus in on 2 or 3 things, not 10 different initiatives. We really need to focus on our Canvas. We need to focus on equity. We really need to focus on those standards that we really need to meet, and that the kids are okay and that relationships start.
Obviously, you're back to Eau Claire again, but you're in this role for the first time. But you had mentioned that it's kind of like your first year teaching for you and everybody in the district.
It really is, and we've got a lot of veteran teachers and administrators in this district that are fantastic, some of whom I've known for almost 30 years. And I heard this from a principal a week and a half ago, that it's like, it's like our first year. And I couldn't agree more. I've been in education for, I think this is my 28th year, and it feels like, and I think I know what I'm doing administratively, even though it's been my 17th year of administration, it's really like a first year of teaching. It's a first year in education. They didn't have classes like this back when I was going to school or we were doing our administrative work. Pandemic 101, that's not the case. We're all learning together, and I think there's an amount of grace that we need to show each other, and patience. And I think we've gotten that from the community, but we've got people working very, very hard to make sure that it's a great atmosphere and a great learning environment as best we can for our kids and for our families. But it is. It seems like that first step, that first year, that first day, because of what we're going through. Gosh, we're doing the best we can, and we've got people working tirelessly. We've had people that have been working since May, even though we hadn't finished our school year. But we've had administrators, staff, families providing input, and it is. We're working 12, 14, 16-hour days. And consulting with the best and brightest in the medical profession in our community, but ultimately relationships matter, and we're going to do the best we can for our families and our kids and our staff, and we'll get through this. We'll get through this together.
And school starts September 1st?
Correct.
All right. Well, we're closing in.
I know. Yeah, it's go time.
Thanks for watching this Hometown Conversation. If you think there's a topic we should be talking about, fill out the form on our website, wqw.com/conversations. Thanks for watching.